We're going to move on to the good of the cause. Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of providing an opportunity to the public to express themselves on school-related matters of concern to the residents of East Brunswick. So to allow for a fair and orderly public comment period in accordance with Board Policy 167, individual comments are limited to 5 minutes. Members of the public are reminded that this is a public televised meeting of the Board of Education and to protect the privacy of all students and staff. Concerns regarding individual students and staff members should generally be addressed by first meeting with the appropriate administrative staff by New Jersey Statute 10412B. Is there anyone that would like to address the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll close the public session and move on to the action items. I'd like a motion for items A2 and A3.
So moved.
Mrs. Shaw, second.
So moved.
Mr. Philipchak, is there any discussion on A2 and A3?
Would Mr. Giuliano just give a brief overview of the approval of deed of drainage and access easement?
Certainly. As the board is aware, we are moving forward with a renovation, improvements, expansion of the Irwin School parking and traffic situation there. And in order to implement part of the plan, which will require the construction of a new parking lot in the rear of the property, we need to have easement onto the roadway which accesses the Brunswick Square Mall. So this easement provides us with access to that and also allows for overflow drainage to also move into the retention area that the mall has. Now that's for excessive water accumulation. The site plan for our improvements is designed to really retain most, if not all, of the water. It's for unusual circumstances. So anyway, the mall has given us the green light on this. They've already approved.
Were the negotiations easy with the owners of the mall?
It was very easy. They were very, very cooperative in approving the easement. They took a little bit of time to look it over, but they were satisfied with what we were proposing, and that's it. We're ready to roll.
Because I think this will make a big difference.
A very big difference, yes.
Any other questions? Can you do a roll call then?
Sure. Mrs. Howard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mr. McAvoy?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes?
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Dr. Cohen?
Yes. Make a motion for item A4, policies for first reading of adoption, deletion, and revision.
So moved.
Mr. Simmons.
Second?
Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion? Yes, Mr. Simmons.
I'm sorry to raise this so late in the game. A little clerical tweak that I would suggest. In the paragraph starting committees shall consist, the second sentence says, an additional board member will also, I would say it should read, an additional board member may also be appointed as an alternate.
Noted.
Just wanted to make mention of the fact that this establishment of a school calendar committee was a pretty much unanimous decision on the part of the board, recognizing the importance and sensitivity of issues related to calendar. And by moving it out of a regular committee position and discussion and moving it to a actual board committee, it will involve more board participation, and since we are representatives of the community, will allow us hopefully to respond to those issues with a little bit even greater sensitivity to the needs of the community. And that was our intention in moving it up and putting it as a board-level committee. Any comments then on that adoption? We'll take a roll call.
Yes. Mrs. Howard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mr. McAvoy?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes?
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Dr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I'd like a motion for items B1 through B7.
So moved.
Mrs. Shaw,
Second.
Mrs. Howard, is there any discussion on any one of those items? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call.
Mrs. Howard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mr. McAvoy?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Dr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you. Again, I motion for items C1 and C2.
So moved.
Mrs.
Second.
Shaw, Mrs. Howard. Any discussion on either of those two items? All those, Mr. McAvoy?
I'm going to say another change order I'm going to say somewhere between a smile and a smirk there, Mr. Giuliani. We're talking $86,000 more.
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? And carries. Move to our financial items. I'd like a motion for items D1 through D8.
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
Philipchak, Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion on any one of those items? Then we'll take a roll call.
Mrs. Howard?
We're voting on all of the items?
Yes.
Yes, except I'm abstaining on purchase order 1603550.
Noted. Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mr. McAvoy?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes, with the exception of purchase order 1603554.
Noted. Mr. Simmons?
Yes, except I abstain on anything that mentions my name.
And Dr. Cohen?
Yes. There's nothing that mentions my name, is there?
I don't know.
Don't think so.
Motion's carried.
Okay. Like a motion for items E1 through E3.
So moved.
Mrs. Shaw.
Second.
Mr. Philipchak, is there any discussion on any one of those personnel items? Take a roll call.
Mrs. Howard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mr. McAvoy?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Dr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion's carried.